All right, this is Emma Curver doing my Module 9 discussion video for business preparation in action. The first question that I chose was question 2, which is using the text as a guide. Describe the 5 stages of telephone conversation, reflect on a phone call that I've made or received in a professional setting, and explain how it followed or deviated from those stages. And then use insights from the chapter. So, referenced first on page 466, the 5 stages of a telephone conversation are opening, feed forward, business, feedback, and closing. Opening is when both parties introduce themselves and greetings are exchanged and reciprocated. Feed forward is when purpose and tone are established, and permission to continue is given. Business is where the substance of the conversation is and the parties exchange roles. Feedback is when signals are exchanged that business is concluded, and closing is when both parties say goodbye and end the call. I make a lot of calls at my job. Some of them are administrative, some are servicing, and some of them are sales. I never used to have to do sales calls, but we've shifted in some roles a little bit, and now I do make some sales calls. We have disclosures that we have to read. So all of my calls have an opening at the very least, where I say who I am, where I'm calling from, and I ask for who I'm calling for and read any required disclosures based on the type of call that I'm making. Feed forward will depend on the type of call that I'm making. For the admin and the servicing, it's usually pretty straightforward. People will give me the green light to continue and just find out either what I need from them or what they need from me. Sales related stuff, sometimes people accept it and sometimes people will push back and sometimes people just straight up hang up on me. So that one can be a hit or a miss on whether the feed forward is consistent or, accepted or not. Feedback usually will consist of any last questions the client has for me, or any follow-up or points or tasks that I might have for them. Closing is usually just polite goodbyes. The structure of those calls works pretty well for me. The one part that I do struggle with is the opening on the sales-related calls, because there are a lot of required disclosures that I have to read before I can really say anything. And people are kind of hesitant off the bat to accept what I'm saying if I sound like a robot of like, hello, this is me from this place, and be aware that I have to say this, that, and the other. So I try to say things in a little bit of a warmer tone to convey that I am indeed a person and they should not hang up on me. And then the next question that I did was question 3. Referencing the text, discuss how a well-structured agenda contributes to the success of a meeting and share an example. So, according to the text, an agenda defines your purpose for a meeting in advance. An agenda is composed of several different elements, including the title, header, participants, subject line, call to order, introductions, roll call, reading of the minutes, old business, new business, reports, go to the order, and adjournment. Meetings can be useful or they can be a waste of time. And an agenda really just helps ensure that meetings are efficient, are effective, and are completed within an established budget if there is one. At my work, we have a morning business brief, is what it's called, pretty much every day, about 30 to 45 minutes before we open to the public. We follow a really set formula / agenda. So they're all R's. So the first thing that we have to do is recognition, where we talk about anyone who we noticed doing something really well the day before, or anyone that we have gratitude for, things like that. Someone who handled the situation very well, just going around and giving recognition to people who deserve it. Then we'll do recap, which will go over the previous day's appointments or anything that happened that is relevant, any updates that we need to talk about, things that might have not gone well, things that are going to need follow-up, or things that did go well that we want to, repeat. And then we do review. So we'll go over the upcoming day's appointments and any points of order that need to be addressed for the day, anything that, we might need to shuffle people around or reallocate tasks. We'll go over all that. And then sometimes we do role play, is the R that they picked for that one, where, if there's a situation or a scenario that we're thinking might happen that day, or someone might come in, that person that's going to be dealing with it doesn't quite know how to handle it, we'll workshop as a group the best way to get that done, or the best way to go about whatever it is. And then I don't remember what the last R is. I forgot. It's tacked up on the board at work, but the last one is essentially release everyone off to go do what they need to do and give time back and let people get open for the day. So that agenda and meeting flow really helps make sure that everything stays on track. So there is a set order and structure to how things are going to be. It gives people something to expect every day, so we know the information that we need to bring to these meetings, and then we know what we need to leave for other times or discussions. And it also helps, similarly, it helps people to not talk about things that aren't relevant in this very limited amount of time that we have, because it's like, all right, here are the things we go over every day. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. And then for the next section, organization and outlines, I did question 3, describe and identify at least 3 of the 9 cognate strategies and provide examples. So cognate strategies are described in the book as ways of framing, expressing, or representing a message to the audience. They are tools to impart knowledge onto the receivers. So one cognate strategy is conciseness. That is being brief, being direct in your verbal and nonverbal delivery of your message. I know that every single one of us has been in a class or a meeting before where we're just sitting there thinking, just get to the point already about the speaker, because they're just either talking for the sake of talking, or they don't know what they're talking about and they're looping it in a circle over and over again. And being concise just helps you get your point across in a clear and effective way without losing the audience's attention. Another cognate strategy is credibility. The audience's belief in your character and in your expertise is tantamount to their belief in your message. I will often talk to clients at work about products and services that we offer, but there are other lines of business within my organization with other products and services that I have a surface level knowledge of, but I'm certainly not the product specialist or the subject matter expert. So a client with interest in those options would likely not be convinced to adopt those options if I were trying to pitch it to them, because I'm not that subject matter expert. I know enough to get them connected to the right person and let the person with the credible knowledge in that specific area pitch it, but I shouldn't be the person trying to convince them to do it, because credibility, or the lack thereof, changes how an audience interprets the value of the message. A third cognate strategy is reference, or the material that I'm using to substantiate my message. At work, I'm generally referencing internal financial material. We, create a lot of our own products and do most of our own services. And so I know what I'm offering clients is correct, accurate material at any given time. And I have constant access to that source material. I get notified if the terms of a product or a service changes. So I'm always quoting up-to-date, accurate material. But if I were referencing, outdated material, or quoting something from another less legitimate institution that isn't as, well-known or as trusted, clients might not trust me in the same way. And then I also did question 4, outlining the 5 key structural elements of a speech. citing the text and sharing an example of a speech or presentation I've given or observed. So the 5 structural elements of a speech are attention statement, introduction, body conclusion, and residual message. So the attention statement is the way that you focus the audience's attention on your speech. It's kind of the initial, when I was in high school, they always called it the hook. So it's what hooks your audience in and pulls them in to feel engaged with your topic or with your message. And then the introduction is what introduces you and your topic. It helps establish a relationship with the audience and kind of develops that rapport a little bit. The body is the main substance of your speech. So this is where the main content is going to be presented in detail. And then the conclusion provides a sense of closure and summarizes those main points in details. Again, kind of recaps everything. And then finally, there's the residual message. That is the final thought or takeaway that the audience is going to leave with after your speech has concluded. So the example that I sprung to mind for me when I first read this question was one of the coolest speeches I ever got to go see. I think I might have mentioned this maybe in one of my other videos, but a couple years ago when Bill Gates came to Spokane, I got to see him give a speech at the convention center. He is a major contributor to the global polio eradication initiative with the World Health Organization. And my mom is a member of or at the time was a member of the Rotary Club, and the Rotary Club is one of the other major contributors. So he came and gave a speech with the Spokane chapter of the Rotary Club about the fight from the 80s to now to eradicate global polio. So he opened it with kind of a brief overview of what the speech was about and some of the background context about the organizations involved. The body of the speech, which was most of it, was about the substantial efforts made from 1988, I think, to today that have contributed to a decrease in global incidence of polio cases by 99.9%, which is crazy. And then to wind it down for the conclusion and the residual, or to wind it down with the conclusion, he summarized some of the key details, went over some of those key points again, and then his residual message was to leave the audience thinking about what the next steps were. At that time, because this was quite a few years ago now, there were 3 countries that still had endemic cases of polio, and then today there are only 2 left. So he left the audience thinking about how far had we come since 1988, and then what could we do to get to this next step that, we're at now, which is great. But that's just one speech that has really stuck with me as a good example of a presentation. But thank you.